Tem of the California State Senate. I'm very pleased to be joined by a number of distinguished guests here, and I always want to begin with my bosses, as I call them, because they are my colleagues here in the State Senate. I want to thank Senator Kevin De Leon for joining us here today, Senator Jerry Hill, Senator Richard Roth, Senator Bill Monning, and Senator Lou Correa for all joining me, and they'll be available for comments and may take the mic in just a few moments here. I'm also joined by a number of guests that you may not hear from directly, but will be available for questions, and I will introduce them as well. Vanton Quinlivan, the Vice Chancellor of the California Community Colleges, Dr. Irene Fuji of the California Association of Regional Occupation Centers and Programs, and if I've left anybody else out, I will catch you on the back end. So, why are we here today? We're here to introduce a bill, but we're here, I think, to do so much more. As you know, 2 weeks ago, we took the entire state Senate down to Long Beach for an unprecedented field trip to look at Long Beach's model of what is called linked learning. The idea that high school curriculum should be a combination of academic rigor and career application across the board. And I think it is fair to say on behalf of my colleagues that to a person, we came back impressed and inspired. And if we are serious about building a high-wage economy, if we are serious about reducing the unacceptable high school dropout rate in California, we must do a better job convincing California's leading growth industries to invest directly in California's high schools. Today, my colleagues and I put forward Senate Bill 594, the Dropout Prevention Bond Act of 2013. It will work like this. The legislation will authorize trust funds for high school districts or consortium of districts within California's regions. The state will agree to issue bonds to industries that are willing to invest their resources and their time and effort in high schools and communities with high dropout and high unemployment rates. The principal that is generated from these bonds will be invested in these district or regional trust funds and will be used for the following: to develop robust career pathway programs for industries which are going to need high-wage workers as the economy continues to grow and to develop. The money will specifically be used for the development of curriculum put together by both industry leaders as well as public educators. The resources will also be used for a variety of after-school opportunities, internships, mentorships, summer jobs, scholarships for students when they graduate high school and begin the post-secondary part of their education, whether it be college or an apprenticeship or professional licensing program. And ultimately, the goal is more young people who complete these pathway programs being hired in the industry and hopefully hired in and with a high-wage job. What will the industries get out of this? Well, to state the obvious, we hear, and you'll hear from Mr. Zarenberg and Mr. Stewart and other business leaders here today, we hear consistently that California is not doing a good enough job educating and preparing young people for the modern workforce, and that business leaders are seeking answers to this very important challenge. But we want to go a step farther, because in issuing bonds, the people who buy the bonds, the industries who buy the bonds, will have an expectation that they're going to get the bond repaid. And how will we repay the bond? The higher success, the greater success of the partnership, the higher the yield for the industry. The more young people that graduate, the more young people that get mentorships, internships, summer job opportunities, and ultimately get hired in the industries, the higher the yield. And this is more specifically the opportunity that we put out. It should be of greater financial incentive for an industry or a business to consider investing in California high schools than it is even to invest in a Wall Street financial instrument. In other words, if a partnership succeeds and more young people graduate and more young people get hired, California should promise to not only return the principal to the industry from the bond, but a rate of return higher than what that industry could generate by investing their money elsewhere. High success equals high yield. We will also propose that there be other ways to fill up or fund the local and regional trust funds in addition to the bond. We're going to look at tax credits. We're going to look at creating incentives for districts to put their own Prop 98 appropriated dollars into these trust funds. We would welcome foundations to invest directly in the district or regional trust funds. There are many good businesses out there, many good businesses that are doing heroic work within California's education system. But I think it is fair to say that most of it is largely philanthropic in nature. If we are serious about connecting public education and our economy in a more serious way, we must approach the relationship between high school education and community college education and our economy as more than just a philanthropic add-on for the business. It must become part and parcel of our business model in the state. And we think that by offering a series of bold incentives, both on the bond side and the tax credit side, that we can take what we saw in Long Beach and what we are seeing in Sacramento and what we are seeing in other parts of the state and bring these kinds of approaches to scale so that every kid has a pathway, fewer kids drop out, and that more young people are prepared for college and the workforce. Let me ask Alan Zarenberg and Jack Stewart to come up together. You know them very well, and I'm always honored when they come to one of my whenever they come to one of my announcements, because we don't always agree on everything, but I got to tell you, we agree on more than not. And Alan Zarenberg, California Chamber of Commerce, and Jack Stewart, California Manufacturing and Technology Association, please come to the podium.
Good morning, everybody. And I first of all want to say that we're here to applaud the leadership of the Senate to invest in California's future. And there is no greater asset that California has than our education system and our higher education system. And we can't always compete for jobs on the basis of the cost of housing or the cost of our workforce. But we've historically been the envy of the world with a higher education system that has attracted jobs throughout California. But we now need to focus on that part of the economy where not everybody needs a degree from Berkeley, where not every job requires a degree from Berkeley. And we need to match up the skills with the jobs that are going to be the future of California, that require academic rigor, as the senator has said, but at the same time are practical, that keep children in schools. And by far, There is no better investment that we can make for California's future in jobs and job creation is to have an educated and skilled workforce that meets the job needs of the next century.
Thank you, Alan. Thank you, Senator, for inviting us today. It's always a pleasure to be able to come and support one of your bills, and this is one of them. And I think that what we're looking at in this bill is an ongoing program and funding for career pathways in education. 25 years ago, more than 7 out of every 10 students in high school took a CTE, or at that time, a vocational education class. Today, that number has dropped to less than 3 out of every 10 are taking a CTE class during their high school years. So we see a huge drop-off, but during that same time, we've seen an increase in the dropout rate in California. So I think I can't say there's a cause and effect between those two, but I think it's an interesting thing to look at. Dropout rate goes down, CTE goes down, dropout rate goes up. So historically, I think that we have an opportunity here to refocus on skills training. In 1987, 25 years ago, 1987, California workers could enter the workforce, especially in my sector, the industrial sector, with under education, under-skilled workers could enter the workforce and work their way up the economic ladder. Today, because of the high cost of manufacturing and the advent of what we're calling now advanced manufacturing, we need a higher skilled worker. And earlier in the discussion, we talked about articulation between high school, community college, and the universities. I think that's critical. Manufacturers need workers at all levels, some with high school degrees and certifications, some with community college associate degrees, and some with high-level engineering degrees. We need them all. And so what we're hopeful this bill will do is set up a structure where there's permanent funding for career pathway education so that California students have opportunity to grow into the jobs that are going to be here in the future of California. And with those workers, we expect manufacturers to do more investment in California when they're able to find the skilled workers and the productive workers that they need. Thank you.
Thank you, Alan and Jack. Power comes in unexpected coalitions, and you just heard from Alan and Jack. Now I'd like you to hear from Stephanie Roberson of the California Nurses Association and Cesar Diaz of the State Building and Construction Trades Council of California. Welcome to you.
What an invitation. Thank you. President Pro Tem Stephanie Roberson on behalf of the California Nurses Association. I just want to start off by saying I can't tell you the number of times that I get phone calls from nurses who have already graduated past the NCLEX and are ready for work. And I have to tell them, I'm so sorry, I can't wave a magic wand and get you a job today. So as we were brought into the coalition, and we're happy to continue to be stakeholders to look at this issue, we actually see this as the potential of being a pretty huge jobs package, a stimulus package, if you will. With the advent of the ACA coming on board, we are going to, from a nurse perspective, have a lot more health professions going to work, and we're going to need those pipelines to open up. So if we can go back to what we used to see, which were partnerships with hospitals working with schools to create the workforce that they need, and they would hire them later. We see that as this bill. This bill could be the answer to bringing those pipelines back together, partnerships working together to invest in the workforce, and the workforce will work for California. In addition, what we want to see this bill doing is bringing the workforce back to California. Unfortunately, all too often, our nurses in California aren't getting jobs in California. So they're working out of state. They're investing in that state and not investing in California. And that doesn't make sense for us. That doesn't make sense to the legislature, I don't think. And it certainly doesn't make sense to California. We need to invest in California and you know, work and pay taxes and give back to the economy. So we are excited about the possibilities of this bill and want to continue to work with Senator Pro Tem Darrell Steinberg, and we're excited about the possibilities. Thank you.
Good morning. Cesar Diaz on behalf of the State Building and Construction Trades Council. Our council represents 375,000 construction workers and unionized crafts throughout California. Our industry spends about $100 million yearly to train about 50,000 apprentices on any given year. What we find is that apprenticeship is the best kept secret in California. And while it trains a highly skilled workforce that allows contractors to have access to this skilled workforce to accomplish the many complex infrastructure projects in our state. We've also found that the decline in career technical education in high schools has also led to the increase of the average age of an apprentice. Today, the average age of an apprentice is 28 years old. When career technical education was prevalent in the school system, it was 18 or 19. And comparatively, the average age of a construction worker is about 48 or 49 years old. Our apprenticeship programs seek out and work with schools and do a lot of the proactive recruitment so that kids are aware of these great opportunities and careers in construction. But it's very difficult for us when there isn't career technical education available in the schools because they simply are not aware of these opportunities. We believe this bill builds upon the foundation that's set forth by this President Pro Tem in his previous bill last year that allowed career technical education to be measured. We believe it will help increase awareness, keep students engaged in their education so they can see the relevance as it leads to a career pathway after high school. And for those reasons, we thank the Senate and the senators here for their support. Thank you.
Thank you very much to both of you. I'm going to ask my colleagues to come up from the Senate and make a few comments in a moment. But first, I would like to, we talked a lot about Long Beach, and Long Beach is a great example of linked learning and how to do this right, combining academic rigor and career application. But it's also being done right here in our backyard in a very effective way. And one of the leaders is Jonathan Raymond, the superintendent of the Sacramento City Unified School District, a good friend, and we thank you for coming today, Jonathan.
Thank you, Senator. Good morning. One of my favorite movies is Field of Dreams. And of course, you know, the premise there is build it and they will come. But for our children in public education, that doesn't work. For too long in public education, we've relied upon these supply side incentives. If we build it, if we think about what our employers want, perhaps they will come. And what I'm so excited about today is that we're really changing that incentive structure. We're providing opportunities for businesses now to come in and to create partnerships with our schools. In Sacramento, we have 28 pathways or career academies that are underway, and it's become our high school reform strategy. Why? Because we've looked at the data. We're seeing greater attendance from our students in our career pathways and academies. We're seeing more of our students being successful and going on to higher education. So it makes sense. These demand-side incentives and structures need to become more of what we're seeing in public education, and that's why I'm so excited about being part of this effort and seeing the great opportunities that can come, because we mostly struggle with creating these robust partnerships with our employers. And I know that this bill today, supported by the Senator and his colleagues in the Senate, and I hope also the Assembly, will begin to finally completely change, again, the incentive structures in public education. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jonathan. Let me ask Dennis Chima of the Silicon Valley Leadership Group and Andrew Giacomini of the Bay Area Council, two of the leading advocacy organizations for workforce development and preparing people for the workforce to come forward and share some brief thoughts.
Thank you, Senator. Dennis Chima from the Silicon Valley Leadership Group. I'm certainly honored to be here this morning and want to thank the Senator for his tireless leadership on ways to improve public education. We're delighted to work with him and his team, as well as the senators and others behind me. And I'm proud to represent the 380 employers of the Silicon Valley Leadership Group. As you can imagine, having the right talent in California and Silicon Valley is really the fuel that drives Silicon Valley. That's what we need the most. And innovation and creating that talent is our highest priority. Critical as well as a strong alignment between the private sector and the public sector. I think far too long, as was mentioned earlier, this has not necessarily been about relevancy, but rather it's been about getting students through a system. And it's very important that we have a relevancy for students, for schools, for districts, for teachers, given these challenging times that we're in. And one of the many things that excites the leadership group and me personally is how we can reach teachers directly through this effort. Our organization has had a more than a decade-long partnership with an organization in the Bay Area called Industry Initiatives for Science and Math Education, an organization that places teachers into industry fellowships. And we as an organization have every year placed more than 150 teachers in summer fellowships, paid summer fellowships where teachers receive great skills, relevant skills, and can bring them back to the classroom and really get excited about going back to their schools in September. And industry gets a great educated person working on a specific project in their industry. It's a great way to partner, and I'm hoping that this bill will allow us to bring that to scale and do more beyond the Bay Area. Andrew?
Thanks, Dennis. I'm Andrew Giacomini, representing the Bay Area Council, which is a business association in the Bay Area, representing the public policy interests of its group of members, which are some of the largest employers in the state. Senator Steinberg has talked to me about this idea for quite a long time and been very interested in trying to create more alignment between the interest of business and the interests of public education, because we're all in the same game together. And he's asked many times, what can we do to create a stronger bond between the two? And I think this bill is sort of the answer to that question that he's been working on for a number of years. And at the Bay Area Council, for us, this bill represents kind of a culmination of projects we've been working on, whether it's innovative financing for education, public-private partnerships, decreasing the dropout rate. These are things that the Bay Area Council has been working on for a long time. And the thing about the problem we find ourselves in is it's very difficult to solve. And if we keep trying to go at it the same way, I think we're going to keep getting the same results that we've been getting, which aren't acceptable to us. Any of us, as parents, as business leaders, as citizens, we've got to try something different. And this bill to us represents that opportunity to come together and leverage what we have in business, what Dennis was talking about, and some of the other people here. I used to be a union laborer, and I went through an apprentice program. That's how I learned my craft. I'm a lawyer now, but that's a different craft that I learned along the way. This idea of apprenticeship is so important, and connecting kids with the jobs they're going to do. There's a gap there. My own kids are in school. They don't really understand where they're headed. And this kind of an idea, I think, connects in young people's minds what they're learning and how they're going to use it. And I've seen kids who come to work for my company, their eyes light up. Oh, this is what it's all about. They understand better. They go back to their educational environment with a better idea of why they're there and more fire for what they're doing. This kind of innovation is what we need in order to do better in California, and we owe that to all the kids for sure. Thanks.
Thank you both. Very, very, very well said. I want to ask my colleagues if you want, and you're more than welcome to come on up and make brief comment. Richard, Jerry, Kevin, anybody? Lou? Go quick. Yeah. Keep it under an hour.
Just very quickly, this bill is innovative. It's forward-thinking. It's one of a kind in the nation. And when you have industry that is investing in these young men and women, you have intentionality for measured outcomes. Because currently the costs are quite enormous when you talk about dropout rates, when you talk about the increase in prison rates, when you talk about the inability for young men and women to launch off into adulthood and become productive citizens, taxpayers. So the costs right now currently are enormous to the state and to California taxpayers. So therefore I applaud our Senate leader, our pro tem, Darrell Steinberg, with his very innovative thinking. It's clearly one of a kind in the entire nation. So I thank you for allowing me to be here with you.
Of course, thank you. Thank you, Senator. Go.
Senator Steinberg, I also want to thank you for his great idea. I'm Senator Lou Correa, and I represent Orange County. I also represent Central Orange County. And as you know, every year we get the API scores of all the schools throughout the state, and Orange County is the same way. So every year when you look at that list of schools, how they rank in Orange County, all the schools at the very bottom are in my district, Central Orange County. Along with that, we have a very high high school dropout rate. And I can tell you that these children, our children, are looking for something, a pathway, somewhere to go in terms of a career. And I can say to you that this bill, what I see in it is a promise of a partnership that works between business, the community, and the schools. A partnership to do what? Very simply, to give these young Americans a way to reach their dreams. So again, Mr. Steinberg, my pro tem, thank you very much for the idea, and I do look forward to working with you on the details. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Rich, go ahead, please.
Thank you, sir. My name is Richard Roth, and I'm from inland Southern California. Historically, we've had one of the lowest high school completion rates, I think, in the state. Historically, we've had one of the lowest career tech college completion rates in the state. And at the same time, we've spent a great deal of time, money, and attention attempting to attract business to inland Southern California to augment what has historically been our economic base, construction and real estate. And I think this bill goes a long way, or hopefully will go a long way, to adding another piece to that. As we attempt to attract additional business to our area, we need to make sure that we have individuals who are properly trained to fill the jobs that we bring to inland Southern California. We need to increase the high school completion rates. We need to increase the career tech and college completion rates to make sure that we're providing workers to those industries that we ask to come into our area and help our economy. So thank you, Senator Steinberg. I look forward to working with you on this great effort.
Thank you. Go ahead, Jim. Thank you.
I'm Jerry Hill, and I represent San Mateo County and Silicon Valley. And the theme word today, as we can all hear, is relevancy. And I think that is no better said than when we look to bring our education system into relevancy for the 21st century. And that's really the downfall. When we create the opportunities for students, when we can eliminate and kind of raise the success rate in education, but more importantly, and equally as important, when we can make our education system relevant for the economy, the new economy. In Silicon Valley, whether it's high-tech, bio, life sciences, the industries that need a relevant workforce. They need students who can provide the work skills that are necessary to continue the sustainability of our innovation economy in California. Without that relevancy, we will lose it to someplace else. Thank you, Pro Tem, for the leadership. Thank you for making this legislature and continuing to make it relevant.
Thank you very much to Senator Hill and all my colleagues and everyone who's spoken. Just a couple of concluding comments, and then we'll be happy to answer your questions. This bill builds on a foundation started, well, it's been foundation laid for many years by others before I came. But last year, the governor signed SB594, which limits standardized tests in high school to no more than 60% of a high school's academic performance index. The reason for that bill was because right now there is an incentive in the system to teach to the test and not to broaden the curriculum in the ways that merge rigor and relevance in the ways we have heard here today. That bill is a foundation, but it begs the question, okay, what are we going to do next? We hope that this measure begins providing some of the answer. You know, Superintendent Raymond talked about the Field of Dreams, and I love that movie as well, and cited that that line we all know, if you build it, they will come. Well, we certainly built enough prisons in this state, and they have come. It's about time we start building career pathways, rigor and relevance for every young person in California so that they can have an educational experience that keeps them in school, is meaningful, and is relevant to what they might choose to do in their own lives. Governor used the term when it came to his local funding formula plan, which I think has a lot of good attributes and a lot of hope. He talked about subsidiarity. Well, I think the message here today is we need to match subsidiarity with, as Senator Hill said, relevance. Curriculum reform needs to be mirrored with funding reform. And we hope that this measure, again, is part of that conversation. Finally, just on a personal note, last week I introduced a measure on online education that got online higher education that got a lot of attention. Got some national attention, and it's important and a really key issue. I must tell you, I am twice as passionate about this, which may not get as much attention. I don't know, but whether it does or whether it doesn't, to me, this is central. This is absolutely central to the future of California. If we don't take seriously merging two parts of our policy making and our world, which are now sitting in separate silos largely, public education and economic development, and bring them together, we will be the worse for it. And if we grab the opportunity and we put them together, we will be the much better for it as a state for now and in the future. We're happy to answer any of your questions, and I'd urge you to ask them of some of the folks that are in the business world, in the real world here, or in the labor field, about any of this and more.
Can you explain a little bit more
Yeah.
how the workforce development bonds would work?
Yes.
And what kinds of businesses are you going after to be interested in this?
Well, first of all, we want to sell bonds to industries that show significant prospect for growth and that are high-wage industries. So that's number one. Number two, we would offer to sell state bonds to either individual businesses or corporations within those industries, or again, a consortium of industries. We would sell those bonds, and the industry or the corporation or the company would have to agree to obviously invest the resources because they buy the bond, but in addition to invest their time and their effort to coupling their expertise with the resources invested in a high school district or a region with high dropout and high unemployment rates, and help develop the career pathways that you've heard about here today. If the pathway is a success, and of course our work will be to define success, but the principle will be the greater the success, the higher the yield will be on the investment. In other words, if the pathway is a great success and more young people are graduating, more young people are experiencing the workplace, whether it be the summertime in between their high school years, whether it be after they graduate, more internships, more mentorships, more scholarships, and ultimately hired into the industry. The more success, the greater the yield. And the maximum yield ought to be greater than what that company or that industry could generate by investing those same resources, that same $1 million, to use an example, in a traditional financial instrument. I don't know whether we can change the business model here, but we're sure going to try. And working with our leaders in industry, some of who are represented here today, along with organized labor and public educators, we think we can answer those questions in a way that creates more success. Does that answer the question?
Yeah. I have a follow-up.
Yes.
I mean, the repayment of the bonds and the interest and the returns that come from Prop 98.
How will you get the money?
We get the Prop 98 money or from other general fund sources?
Mr. Zarenberg warned me that somebody would ask this question. And it's a great question. So look at, part of the process here of the bill moving through as well as the budget, we will answer that question. But let me lay out a couple of possibilities. And again, I want to acknowledge, since they're standing behind me here, that not all of my partners here may agree with all this, but let's just be honest and talk about what's possible. The governor has proposed eliminating, actually, the enterprise zone program, $750 million a year of direct state investment. I personally am not for ending it because I think it does some good, maybe a lot of good in some areas. But I do think it is appropriate to look at that $750 million and see if some of it might be repurposed towards paying the principal and the high yield interest on the bonds that we intend to sell through this bill. I know that there's $250 million sitting as surplus in the new higher tax credit that was passed as part of the budget deal in 2009. I would also be open, of course, to districts themselves, and maybe even the state, I know I could get in trouble here, using some of its Prop 98 money to invest directly in these trust funds and to help repay some of the, quote, debt that is incurred. So I think we have a wide variety of possibilities. But certainly if we're talking about $250 million, if we were able to establish 250 new pathway programs throughout the state at $1 million apiece, and the cost was $250 million, by God, we'll find it, because it's worth it.
And one more follow-up.
Yes.
You say there'd be a variable rate of return depending on the success.
Correct.
I assume there would also be a minimum rate of return?
I'm sure there would be a minimum rate of return as well.
Guaranteed rate of return.
Yes. I think that would probably be one of the inducements for a bondholder to choose to invest in the first place.
When you say higher industries, you mean tech, construction? What do you mean?
I mean tech, I mean healthcare.
Healthcare?
I mean the construction trades. We want to manufacturing. We want to build. We want to grow, and we know the growth sectors in our economy. But yes, all those sectors and more. But it ought to be high wage. I mean, we ought to. It's about building the middle class here, obviously, and creating more opportunities for the next generation to have the same opportunity and prospects that I had when I graduated high school back in the day. Not that long ago. Anybody else?
Are there any specific businesses that have expressed interest in doing this?
Well, we know, for example, that in Sacramento, to take health professions high school is one example, and I know Superintendent Raymond can give you more detail, that the district is already working with a number of the major health providers in Sacramento. We know in Long Beach, we saw a very robust partnership between the Long Beach Unified School District and the Boeing Corporation. But again, most of these partnerships are generated through the vision and hard work of educators and the foresight of leading businesses to say, this is what we should be doing. But there's not enough of it. And maybe in the perfect world, we wouldn't need these kinds of incentives. But the fact of the matter is that our world is siloed, right? Business is doing its very best to create jobs, deal with its challenges. Public educators have their hands full just trying to provide, the basics and educate kids. How do we merge them together? And how do we create real partnerships? I think it's going to take this kind of a pop and this kind of a focus and this kind of an incentive to bring what we know works to scale. And that's always the challenge. I think we can do it. Other questions? Thank you. Thank you all very much. Appreciate it.